Welcome. This is an extension of our recess from the last Board of Elections meeting. We are broadcasting this. We also are recording this. So if you are adverse to being recorded, this is your last chance to sign off. Today, we're going to be going over several critical things as we come up to our next Zoom meeting for the Board of Elections and before we approach some critical deadlines. The first thing we're going to look at here is the final report of the City Committee on Accessibility Review of Polling Site Accessibility. That's a mouthful. And it was quite a work effort on their part too. We wanted to make sure that we had a chance to check. I'm going to unshare this agenda now. That we had a chance to ensure that all our polling places would be available to all voters, regardless of their physical or mental state. So these are, let me just bring up that report.
Hal, while you're doing that, can I trouble you to test Carolyn's audio? She sent a question asking if she had audio.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't seem to have audio again.
You do have audio.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't come up the first time. All right.
Yep. You're fine now. All right. So I'm going to share the cover page. Oh, this is the cover page of the summary report that Sherry did at 3:30 in the morning. Thank you, Sherry. We appreciate your sacrifices.
And it was incredibly helpful.
Yeah. And what I'd also like to share is, I'm going to unshare this for a second. I want to share the cover page of the report that the CCA committee did, because that contains a list of all of the schools that we went out and reviewed. And of course, I have little stickers all around the border of my computer telling me which things are where. So here it is, the CCA poll site. Give me 1 second here. I thought this was going to go much faster, but it's actually, there's a multi-step process, so I really don't have a lot of choice. All right, you should all see now the list of Indiana polling sites or potential polling sites. This is not a complete list. Some of these were sites that we used in the past. Most of these were not used in the spring, but because of the way the law was written to allow us to do the COVID voting, we are not required to limit ourselves to those 7 sites, as is normal state law. We knew that some of these sites were not in good shape, either COVID-wise or as it relates to the ADA. So we went out and we actually reviewed extra sites. And so you'll be seeing some names that haven't been polling sites in the past, and we're going to talk about those. But now I'd like to flip over to Sherry's very comprehensive summary of all of the information. This is how the information is in the CCA report. It's not complete yet because the polling election board has to add our mitigations to their report before we resubmit it back to them for distribution. It will be a public document, I believe, available from the CCA. But each one has comments about the parking and path of travel and their recommendations. Now, their recommendations are subject to our consideration today, and as we go on toward the finalizing of these on the 6th of September. And those finalized voting sites will be certified by the state as being our voting sites. So let me drop out of this briefly. Okay. And right now we are looking for the summary report. Here we are, the poll summary. Okay. And we'll post this. Members of the committee should have received a copy of this about 3 in the morning. And there we are.
I didn't see it until 6.
Okay. Well,
shame on you for sleeping in.
We did try to call.
We both appreciate that you didn't.
Yeah. Okay, Sherry, do you want to run us through this summary?
Sure. And I will try to be brief.
And when you get near the bottom, I'll slowly scroll. I won't do a jerky scroll.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just, Hal, in his experience at Stone Belt, garnered interest and willingness among the Council of Community Accessibility, the CCA, to help us in this effort, which was fabulous. They typically just operate within the city of Bloomington. So this was high interest to them due to the importance of voting countywide. And I think this is the first time they've gone outside of Bloomington to offer their services. In addition, there were individuals from Stone Belt who were able to assess some of the sites with us. And we were there as well, trying to look at spacing and could we get bigger spaces as needed, et cetera. We used one standard series of questions that was created by combining 3 sources of information. One is the typical CCA survey. When they do a CCA survey, they evaluate elevators, all entrances, because they're checking a whole facility. We were only checking those areas that were related to elections. So not all entrances, not any elevators, because we don't need elevators generally. So in addition to the CCA survey, we used a 2016 DOJ checklist for polling places, and also the 2018 ADA polling place checklist from the Indiana Secretary of State. Our objective, of course, was to evaluate accessibility of our election day sites. That includes, as Hal said, parking, entrances and exits and path of travel, and it also included restroom accessibility. The CCA determined in the survey measurements and signage and provided barriers that they identified, and in total, we looked at 36 sites, 33 of them that we have used in our prior elections, 2018 general. One poll site we know is not available, that's Meadowood, so we didn't go to Meadowood this time. And we also added 3 additional ones to look at. So total 36. And then just overall summary. Like I said, we looked at parking, entrances, exits, and path of travel, and restrooms. So just overall parking. Of the 36 sites, only seven of them have no parking barriers, problems, issues. 29 of them need improvement. And generally speaking, the fix to those improvements, and we can fix it as a team, not an issue generally, is either creating parking with appropriate signage or labeling existing parking with appropriate signage, including van accessibility. So you've got side loading and rear loading as needed. And we can fix that by placing, we're guessing, you know, about 100 cones. We have to purchase some signage, but they're fixable by our team. But
Sherry?
a lot of them have parking issues.
Just a quick question. When they refer to barriers, we're talking about not physical barriers, but any type of barrier that would make it difficult, right?
Problems. Yes. Accessibility concerns. Yes. Thank you.
And Carolyn, thank you for that thought. I want everyone to just interject when you see something that you'd like to discuss. Let's do this as an open committee. This is a work group, not a formal meeting, so we're not going to go by parliamentary rules. All right. So if you want to say it, say it. Thank you.
Okay. The second primary area that we looked at were entrances, ease of getting doors open, threshold barriers, things of those type, both inside, getting in and getting out, as well as the path to travel, any sidewalk issues, ramps, that kind of stuff. 25 of the 36 sites had no issues, generally speaking. 11 of them did have issues, and fixes for those issues are not as easy. For a few, for some, we can add wedges and ramps and those sorts of things. Signage. We can also, for some of them, have alert pull teams near doors to deal with either doors that are heavy or door handles that are knobs instead of levers, so they're not as easy for everyone to manipulate. Or obviously finding an alternate location is an option for some of those sites. So that's the second area, primary area that was evaluated. Restrooms was the third area, and of on those sites, 26 out of 36, so 10 had issues. The remainder did not. Simple fixes that we can solve. If the soap dispenser is too high, we can add soap on the counter. We didn't count that as an issue. We can fix that. Put towels where they're reachable, put a sign on the door so they're identifiable. Those aren't issues. But the barriers are real. The doorways are too narrow. The stalls are too narrow. There are missing grab bars. There's knee clearance issues when you're washing your hands. The knobs on the sink, that kind of thing. Kind of hardware in the facility. So having said that, there are certainly some fixes. Our Indiana Secretary of State checklist, as I interpret it, and I am a sample of one, says that literally the text is on the screen that Hal has. The checklist says, if a restroom is available at a pole facility, is it ADA compliant? So that word "if" to me, suggests that it's not a requirement necessarily, although we assessed all of them in the survey. And if an ADA restroom is not available for public use, are poll workers allowing individuals who need to have an accessible restroom, are they allowed to vote quickly? So that's, I think, worthy of discussion and exploration. However, regarding restrooms, fixes are certainly one possibility, is to allow voters needing accessible facilities to simply vote quickly so they can exit quickly and take care of their personal needs. Because we may have lines, so we don't want to make anyone obviously uncomfortable. Another possible fix would be, and we've discussed this, adding portable, accessible restrooms outside the facilities if the facilities allow that. Those are not the easiest things to use, as we have learned in discussing with individuals with accessibility needs from Stone Belt, but that's certainly a fixed option. And then, of course, finding an alternate site is always the third option. So that's kind of a summary of what we learned, significant parking issues, but we can fix them. Entrance and exit, but we can generally fix them either with wedges and ramps or with a little bit of human intervention, but we can't fix them all. We've got a couple that are an issue. And restrooms are a little bit tougher because it deals with the actual structures of the building. So we can, you know, the election board can assess that and help us make a decision. I now have detail on all 36 sites. And of course, I'm not going to laboriously go through each of the 36, but I do have them summarized, hopefully in simple terms, so that if we want to go into that, we can. I know we have been encouraged to have a full, yes, Hal. Yes, yes, yes.
Just want to ask if anyone has a question on this page or any comments on this page that they'd like to discuss. This is the introductions page to Sherry's summary that she sent out at 3:30 this morning. Does anyone have any comments or questions or concerns about this? Yes, Carolyn. Yeah, you've got to unmute yourself.
One question that's actually not related to day of, but are we going to rent an accessible outside bathroom for Election Central during early voting as we did during the primary?
Yes. Yes. Nice.
Okay.
Great. Are those heated?
Probably
Okay.
not.
No air
Sorry.
conditioning either.
No air conditioning. Yeah, at November 3rd, you're probably going to not need the air conditioning, though you
You
may
never
need a
know.
vent.
Never
May need
know.
a vent. Yeah. Someone else had their hand up?
I did, but Carolyn asked basically the same thing that I was going to ask. And also too, at the polling sites, are we going to put some of the handicap porta potties at the polling sites? I
Well,
know Unionville needs one.
We're gonna run through these quickly, and I mean quickly, and we can briefly discuss whether there is agreement or not agreement among the board to do that. Also, there may be some recommended consolidation of voting in order to sidestep some of the more egregious problems with accessibility and regular voting capability of some of the sites. These haven't been looked at in a little while, so it will refamiliarize us all with some of the issues we've been facing election after election at these. So no questions further from anyone? Okay. Nicole, do you have any?
I do not. Thank you so much, Sherry. I never mean for Miss Sherry to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I've seen her email, so I know oftentimes she is, but I'm incredibly grateful. This looks fantastic.
It is really a beautiful piece of work. I was very, very happy when I saw this morning. So the first one on Sherry's list is Bloomington Public Transport. Sherry,
Right.
you were there. Would you like to talk about it?
Right. So I'm just going to kind of familiarize everyone who's looking at the screen with the format so they know how to read it. So Bloomington Public Transportation is one of our standard polls. You see on the notes, it says, gee, the room is pretty small. And then I've got several things across the top. The next column, 558 voters voted at this poll in 2016, which was pretty much our highest recent volume of voters. And I shouldn't say voted at this poll. I should say voted in the precincts at this poll. Some did early voting, some voted day of. The next column are the number of registered voters in 2018 because we cleared, we were able to, the number of registered voters reduced a fair amount in 2018. So that's slightly a more realistic number. And then the three survey areas, parking issues, and for Bloomington Public Transportation, no issues, it's okay. Entrances, exits, and path of travel, it's all okay. And regarding restrooms, absolutely all okay. So that's kind of how you read the columns. The issue potentially is it is a tiny room, and therefore our ability to social distance workers and voting tables so that there's a comfortable area, personal space around each one, I think could be a real challenge. We are guessing maybe 3 voting tables could be in that facility, in that room. So that's how you read the chart. Going down to the next one, Free Methodist, which happens to be pretty close to to Bloomington Public Transportation, within a couple of 3 blocks maybe. So anyway, I kind of grouped those together just because they're geographically close. If you look across Free Methodist, 2,000 voters in those 3 precincts, both early and at the poll. Parking, we know we can fix. Entrance and exit is okay, and the restroom is fine too. We just have to put a sign, no issues. So the board may think maybe perhaps about if they're interested in trying to allow more voting to go on at Bloomington Public Transportation, Free Methodist is a possibility. But that's the summary of those 2 polls.
All right, board, if we could open this to discussion. Well, we're not doing formal opens, but let's just throw this around a little. I actually went there twice.
Yeah, we've been to several of them twice.
Yeah. And the room available to us is not big. And if I was social distancing and wearing a mask and gloves and a shield like I normally do, I would feel very uncomfortable being that close to other voters and the workers. And if I was a worker, I might be a little concerned about working there all day in such a close environment. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Also, it's a very tight in and out, so people would be passing each other very closely to get in and out of that building.
Yeah. The Methodist Church has entries on 2 different streets. So there's an easy entrance exit there for people to avoid traffic issues. There's plenty of parking, I believe. And they don't have any tremendous barriers for us. We just have to put up some cones.
Right.
So
so that would be, if we choose to walk away for now from Bloomington Public Transportation, one opportunity to mitigate that would be perhaps combining it at Free Meth.
Yeah. So we don't have to vote on these today. We can think about them. But this is one I would personally recommend from my personal view of these 2 locations as being a good prospect to combine. Plus, it eliminates some of the need we have for volunteers. And we know during a COVID time, volunteers are very difficult to come by. So
that's about 600 voters at Bloomington Public Transportation, plus or minus round numbers. So you want to go on down how to Bloomington City Utilities.
Yes. Yep.
This also is a small room in the back, but in the past we have managed to get a fair number of voters through that tiny little room. Combining early voting as well as election day voting for those 2 precincts in that poll. When we kind of reacted to the size of that room being so small, Bloomington City Utilities did offer to us an alternative space in the garage area where I think they do all the repairs and stuff on a lot of their equipment. It's a big space. It's a garage. Some people liked it, some people didn't. The whole idea of disinfecting and cleanliness and keeping everything germ-free did not strike me as a garage environment necessarily, but anyway, that is a possibility they offered. And as you can see, the building is accessible. Okay, on all 3 of the last 3 columns. Bloomington High School South is the next. I kind of combined those 2 because again, they are close to each other. As you can see, Bloomington High School South has no issues in the last 3 columns. Bloomington High School South is giving us not only the atrium space that we historically have used for voting, but they are also letting us expand fully into their cafeteria area, which has to be at least double the space, if not greater than that. So it's an opportunity if we choose to merge perhaps those polls to be considered, I think.
Yeah. The Bloomington City Utilities facility is, I wouldn't even call it not ideal. I don't think it rates that highly.
I'm trying to be nice.
And well, to reach the accessible bathroom, you have to go outside the
Correct.
facility and in another door that does not
Correct.
have a doorknob on it. It doesn't have a handle on it. It doesn't have anything. So they have to prop that door open.
Correct.
And if somebody kicks the prop out, then we lose access to the accessible bathroom.
They're basically locking up the whole facility except where we need to be. So
Yeah.
understandable, of course, and they're so nice to let us even consider being there. But yeah, you're right, Hal. I should have mentioned that. Good
Yeah.
point.
To
Do
me,
we
that's
know
a
if the
killer.
garage is heated?
It is. It has
It
one of
is?
those huge overhead blower heaters. So when it kicks in, it would be fairly loud too. And I don't know what kind of a draft that's going to create. We may have ballots flying all over the place if that thing really pushes a lot of air. It's not designed for a voting area. It's
And
designed
it's
as a truck garage.
it's not dark. There are lights, but it's like, it's the top of an open ceiling. So I don't know how well lit it really is either, to be frank.
Right.
It
Now,
isn't-
personally,
it wasn't lit well. Remember, we walked through it,
yeah,
Oh yeah.
and there was grease on the floor.
Yes.
yeah. Personally, I
It's a
love
garage.
It's a
grease
garage.
on the floor. I love the smell of grease in the morning, but I don't
Enough
think
voting.
it's. But I don't think a lot of voters are really going to
I agree.
be encouraged by that, even though they can have COVID distancing there.
Yes.
I think we can achieve that in the Bloomington High School. So I would urge my fellow members on the election board to seriously consider that we not use Bloomington City Utilities and we move that to Bloomington High School South. And the
And
cafeteria is big.
It's big. And it's clean. It's beautiful. It's
Right.
spotless.
They might let us park a truck in there if people are really lonely for the other place, but I don't know that we want to do that.
I had heard of, I'm sorry.
Are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Ellettsville.
Everyone is probably familiar with our St. John's pole. We use the gym at that wonderful church. We have, for those precincts, have had up to 3,700 voters, combining election day and early voting. It is our largest poll to date. Everything looks okay in the last 3 columns, and that is available to us. So of course, we're going to plan on using it. So St. John's is good. We know that moving down now, Edgewood High School has informed us that, assuming they're in session, they are likely going to be using their gymnasium as student space when students are in the building on Tuesdays, when we would be using it as well. So they've asked us to consider alternate sites. So we looked at alternate sites. There is a third site in Ellettsville. Everyone also knows about the Ellettsville Fire Station as being one of our standard polls, which is the third poll down. I don't know if everyone realizes that actually we have had more voters and more registered voters typically at the Ellettsville Fire Station precincts than at the Edgewood High School precincts. So that's always an interesting fact, given the smallness of the fire station room and the hugeness of the gym at the high school.
Tiny. It is tiny.
Yes, it's tiny.
And
there are ramp issues. I mean, it's not great.
And
but anyway,
as far as COVID's concerned, how many tables do you think we could get in there? 2, yeah. 2 voting tables.
And the other issue is it is an active fire station. And that has been an issue in the past once or twice.
Yeah, fires
Yeah.
do close the facility, yeah.
We
Yeah.
do have to, like, tell Ellisville they cannot have a fire or an emergency call anytime on November 3rd, and not sure they'll listen to us.
They actually did say that if the poll workers are there and open, we could keep it going, but if it happens before the poll opens, like it did 2 or 3 elections ago, it has to shut down.
2016, it was
Shut down.
an hour late there or so.
Right.
So we have an issue with Edgewood High School. It's big, great, but the school needs the space. And the fire station's pretty small, and it's going to be kind of difficult to deal with the parking issues there because of the unique ramp that they have. We looked at both the Ellettsville Town Hall in their boardroom, and that whole facility, if you notice in the last 3 columns, is great. We also looked at an additional facility at the Ellettsville Christian Church in their Family Life building. It is a larger than the town hall. Parking, we can fix it. Entrance and exit is great. The restroom, it's not perfect. They're supposed to be 60-inch wide stalls. This is 54. We would have the option of course, discussing any of that. Voting first for voters, portable, whatever we want, or whatever. But those, we said in the last board meeting, the high school, we'd like to find an alternative. The fire station's on the small side for that many voters. So at least we've checked out these 2 facilities as options.
Yeah.
So if I could jump in here just for a minute, it's been pretty easy to, I would be happy to concede for the first couple things whenever we are ready to take a vote. This one has been a passionate one for me. But of course, as I said in our last election board meeting, I would never consider putting a child in harm's way with respect to the current pandemic. We happened to learn about the Ellisville Christian Church. This is a very easy one for me to concede when we're looking at people's health and people's lives. To look at that church tree, I'm telling you, she literally heard about that. I want to say at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and by noon, tree was over at the church. We didn't even have approval yet, but just looking. So it's a wonderful option that revealed itself to us. It's something that I could concede to for this election, given that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Just reminding everybody though, post-pandemic, schools have Wi-Fi, which we need, and they're already ADA compliant. This isn't something I want to continue to fight about. I know it's been a point of contention, but I'm happy to concede that the Ellisville Christian Church would serve our needs for this pandemic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
I think the fire station is, I appreciate all comments, especially yours, Nicole. And the fire station also needs to be at least thought seriously about, I think.
Absolutely.
It does look like maybe we're going to need to put some signage out if we use the Christian church to make sure that people know how to get there.
Yeah.
Don't have to rely on, GIS or whatever, but it looks certainly doable from looking at it on the map.
Yeah.
Yep. When you walk in the gym, there is a basketball court in the gym, and on the side of the basketball court is a stage area. So it's a multi-purpose room, I guess. So I think this will allow us to get enough throughput that we're not going to get a backlog in Ellettsville as a result of COVID distancing in the voting areas.
Even if we combine the 2 polls is what you're thinking, Hal?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm betting on.
They do have a pretty large parking lot as well, so that
Yes.
will help.
Yeah, the satellite view really doesn't do it justice. It's huge, but it does have some interesting slopes to it too. So people, when we place the cones out there for accessibility, will have to be careful that we do it on the ones that are sharing the same level as the entrance door.
Yeah, they
And
don't have a
and
curb cut. You have to go to a certain place to
yeah,
get to the main
yep,
entrance and then back to the Family Life Center, but
yeah.
it's doable.
But wherever we're placing handicap spots or accessible spots, we're doing those in the closest possible parking spots.
Correct. Which may or may not be the marked ones for the facility.
Right.
Often not.
In some cases, they're not.
Often
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Okay. Any more comments about this area, Ellisville? All right, let's move on to the next
All
one.
right. So the next page, I don't know that you can scroll all of them. These tend to be, in addition to St. John's that we've talked about, 8 of our larger polls. They typically have between 2,500 and 3,200 voters in the precincts at those polls. Jackson Creek, we've moved into the gym for more space. That's the first one. And as you can see, the last 3 columns were good. Eastview Church of Nazarene, we've changed the entrance to improve access, and the last 3 columns we can manage by fixing the parking. Grandview, we have to tweak the entrance and exit, but we are using the gym and have space, and I think we can work with it. The restrooms are great. Emmanuel Baptist, the 4th one down. We're using the gym and we can fix the entrance and exit. We think we can fix parking and the restrooms are great. University Elementary, we're using the gym. Some of these facilities have fabulous spaces, which is awesome. Everything's okay. Fixable parking at University Elementary. Sherwood Oaks is a large space for us. The restroom on the floor where we vote is slightly smaller than desired, but there is a fully accessible restroom 1 floor down if need be. And Summit, we're using the gym, all okay. We can fix the parking. Highland Park, we can fix the parking and everything else is doable. So that's all I'm gonna say. But
Okay.
At the end of the day, if you look at that, we're fixing parking at every one of those poles.
Okay.
Okay. Next page are 8 additional poles. My head kind of spins with all of these poles with the amount of work that the pole setup required, to be perfectly frank. These tend to have fewer voters, but still a lot, 1,500 to about 2,000 voters. If you look down the column, we are fixing the parking at every single one of them. So there's a lot of involvement and a lot of great learning thanks to this accessibility survey. IMU, as some people may recall, we are moving to a much larger area of the Union, and they're allowing Alumni Hall to queue the voters, expecting lines, and then voting in the next room, which is the solarium, beautiful space.
And the Memorial Union end of the building does have a ramp,
Yes, yeah, it's great.
a fairly new ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they have nearby accessible parking, but we are going to add parking right at the entrance. So that's why we're fixing parking to make it most accessible, all with IU's approval, of course. So if you look down if we're going full tilt on all of these polls, these are 8 additional polls. We are fixing parking on every single one of them. We have 2 that we have to deal with the entrance and exit and path of travel. That's at the Evangelical Community Church, the Unionville Elementary, and Benford. What are we doing? We are in the gym in the Family Worship Center at the Evangelical Community Church. We are in the gym at Unionville Elementary, in the cafeteria at the Academy, In the gym at Binford, we moved out of the auditorium at Binford into a bigger space. Arlington Heights, we're in that whole gym cafeteria area, and Fairview, we're in the cafeteria as well. We do have, if you look at the third column, we do have an issue at Unionville Elementary. We simply do not have a workable restroom there. So either voters can vote first, which of course they can always do if they have a need, and or portable restroom outside of the facility, as Tree mentioned before.
Yeah. What is the feeling of the board on renting an accessible porta potty for Unionville?
I have no issues. Pandemics are expensive. We're gonna have to make it work.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I agree for that. And then also Burgoon, they're just not really good alternative choices in those two locations for us to move to. So it seems like
Oh.
That might be our best bet in those two locations.
Unionville has a number of voters too. I mean, it's not a,
Yeah,
it's not a small poll. So
yeah.
it's more than just Burgoon, but we'll talk about those soon.
Yeah. Yeah, and we haven't gotten to Indian Creek yet either.
Right. Unionville, they are offering us an alternative entrance that is, the path of travel is shorter. They were really a fantastically cooperating staff with us, but there's a lot of voters in those two precincts. So
okay,
that seems right for an outdoor facility as needed.
Okay, sounds like we can go ahead on portable
as I recall,
facilities.
the principal or the assistant principal was there that day and approved that, as I recall. But of course, we need facility approval on all of this.
Yeah.
The principal did.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Let's move on to the
next page.
ones.
This is kind of a challenging page. The near northeast side of Bloomington, of course, we have had in the past Meadowood, which is a senior living facility that is not available to us on this election. So we know we have to move Bloomington 22 to an alternate pole. Probably the nearest pole is the Unitarian Universalist Church, which is right at the corner of Fee Lane and the bypass. Unitarian Universalist Church is an interesting pole because it has a very high number of registered voters, but the lowest proportion of actual voting. And I think that's probably because, it's a number of students who are registered and they don't exit their registration quickly as they move out of the community. So in the past, we've had, our largest election was about 1,000 voters in those two precincts. We also have quite a number of student, often provisionals, but it's a good facility and it's worthy of discussing with the staff whether we could even expand into additional space from the room that we have used in the past.
Yeah, they have offered us the hallway outside the meeting room, which is a sizable hallway, fairly wide, and it leads into the area outside of the worship area, which is a sizable area as well. And I'm sure they'd have no trouble with us using that. Plus the worship area itself is all the chairs are movable.
Yeah, I agree with how the gentleman who was kind enough to show us all the spaces was quite open, but I think I don't have official word from the facility that it's available and, to all of the extra spaces, but they do have room if it's available to us.
Yeah.
Well, so that's.
But we do have their agreement to use the meeting room and the hallway. He did say that was no problem.
The gentleman who showed us around,
yes.
who is, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just okay, something we have to work on.
Yeah.
They're a fairly civically minded group. My one concern is that we're talking about a high student population poll and a high risk senior poll from Meadowood. combining those two might be a little bit of a question mark or make some people nervous, but
Okay, good thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Good thinking. But so
Um,
let's move down a little
yeah,
bit to the
okay,
Genesis.
but everybody at Meadowood qualifies for an absentee ballot
it's true.
by definition. So we could also encourage them to go that direction. Or at least make sure that they're aware of that option. Okay, can we talk about Genesis now?
Yeah, Genesis is it's a large poll for us. It has 3 precincts, and if you combine election day and early voting, it's in the neighborhood of 1,800 voters. So it's not small. It's kind of one of those average sizes. It really, we can fix the parking, no issue. But there are issues regarding entering the poll. There is one ramp that is too steep, and we, at least Hal and I, our brains can't figure out how to fix that ramp to make it work from our knowledge. And any ramp there would need, which we don't think, it does, the current ramp is too steep and has no handrails on it, even though it would need it if it was properly sized.
And it also has no bed.
Yeah.
Halfway up, which a ramp of that steepness would require. There would have to be a resting place partway up. So if we were building a ramp for this, it would be
zigzag.
It would have to extend at least one car width into the parking lot in order to provide the correct slope, and maybe further.
Yeah.
I think it's a horrible solution.
Yeah.
Both by the fact that it takes a lot of work to do it, and it would take a lot of work to tear it up, and it would be just lumber afterwards. Nothing that we could leave there for the community, nothing beneficial. And personally, I think this is a failing point of that particular polling place.
Yet it's one of our larger, a decent sized poll. And I have to say also the restrooms have a lot of issues. Too narrow entrances, stalls not wide enough, knee clearance not possible at the sinks. It's just, it's surprising to us. We didn't expect this, but it is a reality of Genesis.
Right.
My only concern about this, when Sherry was so kind to relay all of this to me in a previous discussion, is, it is right at the edge of Meadowood, and you are right, Hal, they all should qualify for the ability to vote by mail. But I'd like to imagine I'd be a feisty old person, and how many elections you voted in that you would want to vote. So that's my only heartbreak. I get it. It's not going to likely work out for us, but I guess I want my voters at Meadowood to know how difficult it is sorry, we're not coming to you, and sorry, the church right up the street is not available to you. That's just heart-wrenching to have to deliver that double barrel news.
Yeah. I think this
UU Church is basically just across the street, so it's not any more difficult, I think, for Meadowood people to access than Genesis. If
you still driving, Miss Carolyn, they're not driving.
I know, but I'm guessing that they'll either take the bus, their transport van, because they're not going to be going all the way from Meadowood to Genesis on foot either. And they do have a van that they use for transport, and a bus for basketball games, because they're a huge basketball fans.
Right.
Yeah. Of
So
all the sites we saw, this one, I cannot imagine a mitigation for this that would be reasonable.
So this is the only thing that I wonder. I'm going to presume, I don't know the rules and regulations of a nursing home, but do they forbid them to go out? And I'm only asking for any of those in the independent living portions of Meadowwood, are you do you have to stay on grounds you're never allowed? What are we going to do for those voters who just insist that they want to come out?
Well, I mean, I believe that the rules for the nursing home are different than what we can provide. I mean, we have to provide them with an accessible location. If the nursing home says they can't leave the property, that's up to them.
And I suppose that there are certainly voters in Bloomington 22 that vote at Meadowwood that don't live at Meadowwood.
Exactly.
There are other homes.
Point man.
Yeah.
So we need to find an alternate location because we can't use Meadowwood as our voting site for that precinct, that single precinct. So, and there may be other structures on that part of town. We didn't know what to do with the data. We kind of went, wow, we were really unfortunately surprised, but Genesis is not a small poll for us. So.
Well, Genesis stepped up when we lost our polling site. I know y'all remember that in 2016.
Yes.
Yep.
And at that time, we called every place in that area.
Yep.
And Genesis was the only place that said, bring us your poor and you're hungry.
Yeah. And
I hate to walk away from them. They are so wonderful to the voters there.
That's how I feel too.
The only alternative would be if we provided people or some kind of mechanical lift to get chairs up to the level of the entrance, because it would be, I would hesitate to try to push someone up that ramp. It is so steep. And I think even a motorized chair would have a problem with the steepness of that ramp. So I don't see that we have a solution here.
Okay.
We checked the side door, we checked the main entrance.
Yeah.
There are steps, and we would have to build quite a sizable ramp or buy one to be able to say that we've provided accessibility to people.
I mean, I'm happy to, try to get our technology expert who sets up equipment and sets up our parking and our facilities for the polls to at least give us an informed opinion. I'm speaking of Bob White.
Yeah.
He certainly knows ramps and constructions. He's a master at that stuff, to get his view if there's a way that he can envision accessing that voting area.
Yeah.
I guess before we totally walk away, and if we have to, I think some kind of consultation would be in order, given that they have to make that work on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what they do. I can't imagine how that would be considered accessible, but they must have some very hardy people. So why don't we make this a work item for the Board of Elections to individually go over and take a look at it this week?
I mean,
the ramp we're talking about is just to the right of the main portico, as you're looking at Genesis Church.
Yeah.
And let me know what you think. And Bob White, if he could go out and take a look at it, his opinion would be very valuable to us.
Yeah. It certainly, I suppose it's possible to recruit a poll worker to push or guide, someone in a wheelchair, but scooters are usually more independent and walkers are pretty, and there's no rails on the ramp. So I hesitate about putting a poll worker in that area of responsibility.
I do too.
It fails on a lot of points. It really does.
But if it could be made to work, then of course, they're a very welcoming and wonderful facility for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Howe. If we can recess instead of adjourn whenever it's time, and see if Bob White can meet us out there. I trust him if there is a way to make it work before we walk away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're already
Absolutely.
saying no to Meadowwood. And
Absolutely.
Meadowwood is saying no to us too. If we're already walking away, that way, if we choose UU, we did everything that we could
yeah.
before then.
We
And they're
we
all
will
right there together. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can make an informed decision involving all of these precincts that vote in that area.
we will recess this meeting when we get through the other items on the agenda that are not long ones like this one. And we have another work schedule session scheduled for next Tuesday prior to our regular Board of Elections meeting. So that'll give us, which is on Thursday. So that'll give us a chance to tie up any work items related to where we're going to vote. And then at the Board of Elections meeting next Thursday, we'll be able to announce to the public, this will be where we vote. And this is where everyone will congregate to cast their ballots. So great.
One more page.
Yes,
Wait,
one more page.
Can I interject something here? I just called Genesis Church and talked to the gal there. And I asked her if they do use the ramp. And they said there is one lady in the church that does use it. And her daughter brings her. She does not push herself up there, but the daughter does get her in the church up that ramp. Just FYI.
Okay.
Yay for us. Yay.
Yeah. All right. All right. Good. Well, this is a work item carried from this meeting prior to the next work meeting to assess that with Bob White. Great. Okay, Sherry.
Okay, the top of the next page, the two, these are kind of our smallerish polls. The top two are kind of more central Bloomington, Monroe County area. They're on the smallish side for sure. They have no issues. Faith Lutheran, which is pretty close to Sherwood Oaks, and Tri North, which is in the neighborhood of Arlington, but that right now they're standalone facilities. We use the gyms. We've moved to the gym at Tri North and no longer planning to use the cafeteria, but they're on the smallish side, but the rooms are great. Facilities are great. So if we're doing full election, those two are fine if we choose to use them. Then the outlying polls are the remainder of ones on the list. Steinsville, Harrodsburg, Southside Christian, Burgoon, Smithville Christian, and then the Indian Creek area. All of them require fixes for parking, but that's no surprise. That's pretty much throughout our polls. If you look at the last column, all of them also are not providing accessible restrooms. So we either are letting those voters vote first, and there aren't a lot of voters at these polls, or we are perhaps asking the facilities if we could place a portable facility outside. So you see the number of voters and everything along there. In terms of entrances and exits, I think we can fix, unless Bob White tells me I'm wrong, I think we can fix them with wedges and different things. The very bottom of the list, Indian Creek. I want to say a few more words about that. We've historically used Indian Creek Fire Station, and that is not really available to, at least where we have always voted at, that facility is not available any longer. They now have full-time fire people, firemen, I don't know if there might be women, on duty 24 hours a day. Therefore, our space is their space now. They did offer voting in one of their big garage bays, but we do have an alternate location that's very close. I don't know how far. It's like less than a half a mile.
Less than a quarter of a mile.
A quarter mile at the Indian Creek Lions Club. So again, it's big, it's bigger than Indian Creek Fire. It's, has some issues just like the other facilities do. But we do have that, amazingly, that is one place that we were able to locate an alternate site given the challenges at Indian Creek Fire Station.
Okay. Sherry, that was a beautiful piece of work.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Uh,
Sherry.
Yeah, that was really
Welcome. It
excellent.
is draft. They sent a summary, and honestly, I haven't gotten through all their summary. This is from all the detailed notes that we've been sharing. So we'll, and like Hal said, we are going to take all the learning and translate it in terms of what we choose to do, what we plan to do to ensure accessibility, and then that becomes punch lists for setting up the polls and et cetera.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Very
Sure.
nice, Sherry.
One
Well,
question,
okay.
sorry.
We're not done yet. There's
At
still
the
more.
Lions Club, is that subject to board approval or have they said it's okay?
I realized this morning early that that was like not clear. While we were there, we contacted the board, and they said it's available and they waived the fee to use it, although we have not, I don't think, officially said, okay, we want to use you. So
All right.
they were very great.
Okay, that's great. So other members of the board, my colleagues, please consider the discussion we had today and think about any issues you might have. And we will get together next Tuesday or sooner if there's a feeling that we need to do it sooner than that. And in the meantime, we'll be setting up a meeting with Bob White so that we can take a look at Genesis from a different point of view. And he can tell us whether it's mitigatable or not. Also, the ones marked with porta-johns need to be considered. We need to decide just how many we want to go for, or whether we want to invite people to vote first at those sites. All right, next thing on the list, we do have a deadline coming up, the 5th or the 6th, for Karen and for Nicole to be able to submit to the state our list of final voting sites. So we have to get that wrapped up at the next work session or the board meeting for sure, because that's right on the deadline. Now, Nicole, did you want to discuss the budget for the election?
Very briefly, Hal, and this will be your first, it's been 1 year ago that you came to us as an election board member, and you very, very briefly got to see it before we ended up, like you walked into the room and then we had the election board. So
That's
the
true.
only thing that I'll say, just to bring you up to speed, is what we typically do is try to get as close to the same type of year with respect to the election as it was 4 years ago. So in 2021, which is an off-year election, we compared it with 2017. Now, in the tens, we want to thank the council and the commissioners that they will be paying us more in 2021 than they did in 2017. We're all very grateful for that. Typically in an off election year, we use that time to get our voter list maintenance work done. We get our supplies and things reordered, because going into 2022 is going to be the county election, and that is just as many voters eligible as in the presidential election. So you're pretty much kind of preparing for the same type of election. And that county election 4 years ago, I'm sure you will recall, better than expected turnout. The difference between 2021 and 2017 has to do with the census this year, because once the census is complete, the federal government will redraw lines, the state will redraw lines, and then Monroe County will have to redraw precincts, which will require bipartisan teams. So there are a lot of places where you don't see any numbers because we don't need the judges and the sheriffs and the inspectors and the janitors, but we will need to hire bipartisan teams. And that work is in addition to all the other work that Karen and my voter registration team do. And so because we have now been capped from the 60 compensatory hours that you can accrue to 40, I'm going to have to offset that with some well-deserved overtime for the work that we are going to ask them to put in. So that is the difference between what we're asking for in 2021 versus 2018. We're roughly talking $40,000 more that I'm asking for in 2021 versus 2017. Did that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Was there anything else on that you wanted to discuss, Nicole?
I did not, other than to thank my colleagues who helped me come up with these numbers. I have reached out, and my liaison is aware of what we have asked for and why. We are incredibly gifted to have Trent Deckard as the clerk's liaison because he worked at one time for the Indiana Election Division. And so he very much knows the challenges that we will face in 2021. And he was wonderful to speak with regarding what I was asking for and why. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And thank you for reminding me that this month is my first birthday or first anniversary with the board.
First of many.
I'll tell you, I am really impressed, and every day I learn more about the depth of the talent on this board and among the staff of Election Central and the clerk's office. And I'm really thankful that if I was going to end up somewhere, this is where I ended up.
Well, happy birthday. It was an incredible gift. Your appointment to the election board was an incredible gift to us, and we're incredibly grateful. I think we all work together really well, and we all want what's best on behalf of Monroe County and the voters. Thank you, Hal.
Absolutely. And this will be the year we prove it.
Amen.
I made you a virtual cake, Hal.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
I
you.
hope it tasted good.
Yeah. Now, I brought up the issue of absentee ballot requests because there have been a few notes going back and forth regarding this from Karen Wheeler, the election supervisor, and other people. Karen, do you want to summarize the issue? You're on mute right now.
Okay. So the ABS mail, to get it, you have to have one of the 12 reasons, and then that's open to anyone that qualifies. So those can be sent out. The best way is to go to indianavoters.com and apply for it there. It's various reasons why it's better. For one thing, we really can track that and we can see, did you apply and do we have it ready to go in the batch report versus if we get it in the mail. You know, we have thousands of them and people call in and say, hey, did you receive mine? I sent it in the mail. We just don't have the time to go looking through the thousands of them, but we will look for them if you do it on the indianavoters.com because that's a very simple procedure and takes very little time. Of course, when we process that ballot application, we will be processing the ballot will go out around September 19th. At this point, the state is telling me that I will have the presidential candidate for sure by September 10th. It could take that long. I could get it sooner, but at least by September 10th. And that means then I still have to send that ballot to Hart. They have to process it. They have to turn it around, send it back to me. And then we have to send out we have like 6,000 of them already. So we'll have everything ready to go with the labels and everything, but then we'll still have to print those ballots and put them in the envelope. So it's a really short window to get all of that done. If it goes till September 10th and it's totally out of my hands.
Right. Okay. Hart is the manufacturer of our voting machines. Right.
And they also finish the ballot. I put it together on an Excel spreadsheet and then they make it look pretty. And then they also print all of our ballots that we use on election day. I print the ballots for early voting and for mail.
Okay.
Couple of quick questions about the online website too. It has been streamlined. It's much more, much less likely that people will get confused about where to go. And the other thing is that there are fewer transcription mismatches because we can't read somebody's handwriting.
Okay.
So, that's all there. And plus it uses your online signature. So again, we won't have issues with signature mismatches. So yeah, it's a
And-
great, and it was very easy to use this time.
Yes, and the voter can actually track their ballot process on that. So if you requested an application, right now it's not going to show you too much because they're just still sitting there. We haven't printed them yet, but just give us a little time. And once we print them, it's going to say for Joe Smith, that ballot is pending or it's waiting action or, or it's been sent out, wherever it's at. So they will actually know, oh, I need to be waiting for it to come in the mail any day. It's been sent out or it's not there yet. Again, we have so many already, and I know our numbers are just going to increase tremendously. I always like to give a little background too with 2018 in the general election, which was a big election. We had less than 1,300 mailed applications. Right now we're at probably, 6,000 applications. And our mail already is pretty enormous for where we're at in the election. We have a long ways to go in that regard. We feel like we have a short time to get everything done, but we have a lot of days for applications to come in.
It's only August.
Yeah, it's only August.
And then
Uh,
can I also say about the ballot, if you get it or when you get it, you can just stick it in the mail. And if you do this early, I'd suggest doing that. Put it in the mail. You've got the postage paid, but there are going to be people who want to hand deliver it. And that's what you have to do. You have to hand deliver it if you don't use the mail. And that means bringing it here and handing it to a person. We are not open at this point. So we will open when we have early voting, October 6th, and you can bring them in. We cannot do a drop box. We can't put them in a slot. It has to be hand delivered to an employee that works here.
And who can hand deliver those?
Only the person, if it's your own personal ballot, you can bring it in. But you can also bring in somebody who lives in your household, not necessarily a family member, but anybody in your household. Like if you're married, you can bring in your spouse, but then you have to also do an ABS 19. So you're going to have to fill out a form that says you have brought that in. They don't have to be married. They don't have to be related. They have to be in the same household. But so it's easiest if you bring in your own. And then of course, if you have power of attorney, you can bring in a person's ballot, but they also have to fill out the ABS 19. So it's more work. And if we have lines, we'll probably have lines for voting, but then we'll have another line, hopefully is what we're planning to do, that people just are going to drop off their ballot. It's going to be obvious they're holding a ballot. We know they're not there to vote. They're here to drop it off. But there could be lines for that too. And then if they need to fill out the form, they're going to have to come into voter reg and fill out that form.
Right. Okay.
The other person who can bring it in is bonded courier, but then you have to pay them, so it's more expensive. But that's the total list.
Yeah, which
Power
would
of
never.
attorney, right?
Power of attorney.
Power of attorney.
Yes.
So attorney in fact, power of attorney, bonded courier, mail person, person in your household, or yourself are the five that's allowed.
In the spring, we had a no excuse absentee ballot voting. Do we have that now?
No, we do not. So you have to qualify for one of the 12. And there's a number of them. And so the easiest one to mention, of course, is if you're 65 or older, because that's, it's pretty easy to know that. I'm going to have your birthday. Are you 65 or older? That's great. You make that, or the voter makes the choice, whatever they feel that is the right answer for them, whether they're going to be out of the county, whether they're caregiver, whatever it might be, just know that you are signing a legal affidavit stating that this is correct. So I can't tell you what to mark because people will say, well, what can I mark because of COVID? We don't have one for COVID, but if you're 65 and older, you can mark that one. So,
Right. What if you're 20 years old? Can you mark COVID?
I don't have COVID on there.
Right. Okay. Can you
And
write it on?
if you mark a box, this is according to the state, and the election board really needs to make a ruling on this, but in Angie's opinion, that if they make a box and write COVID and check that box, that's enough to reject it. And that's her opinion. And then if they mark a box that says they're ill and write COVID, or they're homebound, but and they're they're saying it's because of COVID, then the election board has to make that decision. And I have a few of them with me here that I need to know what you want to do with them. Do you want, I did I send that? I think I sent that all out to you, didn't I? The election board, what Angie said.
I would still like to hear county legal's opinion on that before we make any decisions about those. I've done a little bit of research, and there are a couple states. So in Tennessee, they actually said that that is not a valid reason. In New Hampshire, where the wording is very similar to Indiana, the legislature actually changed the wording of their law and said that the two are equivalent. In Indiana, we've not had a ruling. I believe there's still some litigation going on to answer that question, but we have no idea when that's going to come through. It might not be until late October for all we know.
Right.
So I think that becomes a difficulty for us, but I would like to hear what our legal representative for the county has to say about those equivalencies before we make an actual decision.
Right, and I would really need that as soon as possible, because if we're rejecting them, we really want to contact them.
Okay.
Correct.
Who needs to request that? Does that need to come from me or
Probably.
from Nicole or from the board?
I think it can come from anybody, so it might as well come from you as the chair.
Okay.
And so I'll gently remind the board that as of today, I have no reason to believe that the state is going to implement or extend no excuse ballot or no excuse voting by mail for the general election.
Agreed.
The conversations that I hear from behind the scenes are don't even ask for this.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that they ruled that they would not, but it's been appealed again. So that again is still an issue. But there was a ruling a day or two ago that said that it would not be a valid excuse. There would not be no excuse vote by mail for this election.
All right, as I'm going through some of these, I think I know the answer, but since the state said it's up to the election board to say this, if they've marked 2 or more boxes and one is, I am prevented from voting due to the inavailability of transportation to the polls, I would say we would accept that because they have a reason. And then they had another one that says COVID. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yeah.
Agree?
They marked 2 boxes,
Mm-hmm.
but one of them is a valid reason they don't have transportation.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah. I think I would agree that that's valid.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Just for the purpose of stating the obvious, when you sign an application for an absentee ballot, you are signing an affidavit. You're swearing under penalty of perjury that what you're checking off is true and the information you're giving is valid. And the penalty for that is, I probably has never been administered, but if it ever was, it could be 2.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
It is serious business.
Exactly.
It's very steep, but I'm not aware of a case where it's ever been enforced either. That doesn't mean it hasn't been, and it doesn't mean this couldn't be the first time.
Well, and the other issue could be that you would be opening yourself to a challenge, and that might make
Overthrow
it
it.
very difficult for you to,
Yeah.
you know, to get your ballot in on time or to vote. So that becomes an issue. A challenge is much more likely, let's say, than the state taking you to court. But
Yeah, true.
Okay, so
in a way you could be disenfranchising yourself.
I have some that definitely are marked COVID, or they haven't marked any box and they just written across it COVID. Do you call that a rejection, or you still don't want to make a decision?
I believe that from the state election board, that their statement was that that would be an invalid reason, and
Yes.
that those people need to be contacted and to resubmit their applications if they feel that one of those 12 applies to them.
Oh, great.
Can't
Yep.
just make up the reason to
Yeah.
to do it.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments on absentee ballot request or COVID-19 reasons? Nope. All right. There was an issue that arose in the last couple of days regarding the appropriate signature for some absentee requests. Nicole, would you like to report on that?
I'm sorry, please say it again.
This is on the appropriate signature allowed for some absentee requests between digital and hand signed.
Well, so I think the most important thing for me with respect to Monroe County voters would be that as an election board, we have always tried to work together in favor of the voter
We
to
have.
accept a signature. I think this would be an amazing opportunity to promote, strongly encourage voters to include that phone number so that we can call you. I know you will well remember we had a lovely couple in Monroe County. The wife, I think, she put her paperwork in the husband's envelope or something similar to that. And we did get a hold of them in time to make changes, but I think, to correct the error. But I think this is just an opportunity to promote, please put that phone number down. We don't want to reject anybody's signature. We want everybody to vote. We're already working. We already want to process your paperwork. And so that would be the only significant thing that I would want to say.
Okay, but there was a ruling that you passed on to us, I think today.
It was the Frederick case.
The Frederick case, where the state indicated that you could use an electronic signature if it's freehand. Hi, Kitty. But you cannot cut and paste a signature, nor could you type your name on it electronically and have that be considered a signature.
Right.
So you have to have a signature pad that you could sign.
It has to be a human signed signature,
Right.
and not a cut and paste of something else. So,
and again, this is another good reason to do it online, because what they will then do is use your signature that is on file for your application, instead of you having to print it out, sign it, and then fax it or email it, or however you got the application to us.
But Nicole is right. That phone number, we can't stress that strongly enough. If we've got a problem, we want to be able to reach out to the voter before it's too late.
yeah.
And
So the phone number is important.
Yeah. So that being said, is there any other business before the board?
For the cat?
For the cat, yes. You're not seeing what I'm seeing, but
Thank God.
We're seeing the other end, Hal.
Anyway, it's time for her snack, so that's why she's bugging me.
Actually, I did have one question. So has Bob checked the Wi-Fi at all the alternative sites? At this
No, we have not. We are assuming at this point that it's great, but he will check everything before, you know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just don't want to send him on a wild goose chase until we have things hammered out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to call everyone's attention to the notes at the top of the agenda here. Sorry, the Zoom notice came out so late. There were problems with Zoom bad enough yesterday so that the president of engineering of Zoom sent out a personal letter to the world apologizing for the problems they had in allowing people access to Zoom and creating Zoom meetings. So we're sorry about that, but we've scheduled this working session for every Tuesday at 2:30 between now and the election if we need it. We don't have to meet, but if we do meet, we'll know it beforehand and we'll be here. If not, we will cancel that meeting. And the third note is the meeting on Labor Day week has been moved to the 9th at the request of one of the board members. So we can work on last minute budget things at that time. And I think that's everything before the board. Is there anything else?
So when will we know, that cats is so funny. When will we know about the poll sites? Is that going to be next week? I'm getting a lot of people pushing for that.
Yeah, I think personally, I'd be ready to commit next Tuesday at our work meeting. Is everyone else in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think
Carol?
Genesis would be the major question, and then looking at the other consolidations that we've discussed.
Yeah.
And if anything, of course, comes up in Sherry's mitigation work, she'd let us know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I can be ready by next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Can I make one more comment regarding that?
Absolutely.
I don't believe Indiana requires that notification be made to voters when we do move poll sites.
That is correct.
We certainly chose to notify everyone in the primary. We moved almost everybody in the primary. And I don't know the decision we'll make. But anyway, I guess because we now have extended early voting days, more like normal, and we are going to likely move at least some of the voters. I guess I would ask the board to at least explore the cost of perhaps a postcard that speaks to early voting hours and new poll locations so that you vote, you're registered in this precinct. These are early voting hours. This is where to go by mail. And this is where to vote on election day. Real simple.
We had a meeting today with a company called Midwest, the clerk, and you'll get roped into that little postcard too, I am sure. Nicole, do you want to talk more about the Midwest?
So yes, happy to do that. Thank you, Tree. We've had a Zoom meeting with Faith from the United States Postal Service. There was a conference call today. I very quickly realized that one was not going to work out for us, but we already use Midwest Pre-Sort. That is how we can get our ballots to you in such a timely manner. They have been such an incredible vendor for us. And so I am sure everybody has seen the news. It has kept me up at night with respect to the mail issues that are going on. And so Kurt was very kind to come down and talk with us. Well, he named another Indiana county who that clerk I know, like, and respect. She's very sharp, and she sends out a postcard. So Tree, correct me if I say this wrong. I get the impression that they buy the mailing address for every single address in that voting community. And then she sends out applicable information and so it's one postcard per household, not one per voter, one per household, and gives you the information that is applicable to that particular election. And
so do they do it by precinct?
No.
They can, but it is more expensive.
Yeah. He buys the addresses, the mailing list from the post office so that you get something based on your address, not on how many registered voters live in that home. And so he was going to get us sample of that, what that clerk sends out, to see if we can tweak it for our purposes here in Monroe County. And it sounds like it could be a very cost-effective way to get out some voter education. I am trying to think of at least 7 different ways to reach out to all Monroe County voters with the information we need to pass along. And that's one of them, in addition to others that we've used in previous elections. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So to clarify, let's say I live in Bloomington 22 and I'm being moved to a different poll because I usually vote at Meadowood. Am I told because of my address where I vote? So it is kind of by precinct, or do I get all polls on
You
that?
get all polls.
That must be a lot of words on that postcard.
The
Well, it's
postcard can be as big as this piece of paper right here.
It's a bigger postcard,
Oh,
and
Sherry, like you sent out for the primary. Remember that little thing that you sent out that gave all that info on it?
yeah, I
It can be in
remember.
color too.
I remember.
Right.
This one, you know how you did that?
Oh, I
It can also be in color too.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think the post office warned us that if we're not sending first class, it will be substantially slower.
It will go out first class.
Oh, okay. First
and
class postcard.
Yep, and it can be as large as we want.
and you
That
know,
doesn't affect the cost.
Okay.
Just a couple of other reminders. So one, obviously do it everything early this year. You know, you
absolutely.
don't want to delay.
No.
The other is most of this information is available on indianavoters.com. You know, where you vote, who's on your ballot will all
It
be
is.
there. And I actually want to really make a compliment to the folks who've put together our Monroe County Voters.us site, because
Yeah, it's
that
beautiful.
really is very complete now and has links to everything you need.
Good.
Will tell you a lot of the voter information, gives you all the dates. So that's a really good site to
Yeah.
mark and
Bravo.
browse as
Bravo
well.
on that. Yeah.
That was
I have it
Tina.
book. I have it
That would be
bookmarked.
Tina.
Tina.
I have it bookmarked, and every time I get a call from a voter asking a question, that's where I go to get the answer. It's
Oh,
great.
good.
There's just nothing else on there. So, I mean, it's all about elections. So it's,
Right.
that made
Yeah.
it sound bad, but it's
Yeah.
really easy to maneuver.
And there's also information there for folks who want to work the polls. There's a poll worker portal as well.
Okay.
So all
Okay.
that information's there too.
Okay. Is there anything else from anyone on the working board here, or the working panel?
Just a
All right.
thank you again to Sherry for all her hard work on that, and being up at 3 in the morning when I certainly was not even awake, and I get up early. Thank you to you, Heather, for going out and somebody's busy, going out and looking at all those polling sites with Sherry and with Tree. You guys have been phenomenal, and I'm smart enough to know it. Very, very
I'll tell
grateful.
you, thank you, Nicole. It's very kind words. I learned so much from the CCA in this process. It
Yeah.
was really informative
too.
for all of us.
Me too. Me too. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we're going to recess, and then we will take questions from anyone. We have one hand up right now. So let us recess on subject to call of the chair until next Tuesday at 2:30. And this does not include a field trip to Genesis Church. All right. But we will be taking that field trip between now and then so we can assess that accessibility issue. That's the worst one I've ever seen, I think, in my opinion, but I haven't seen more than 34 or 36.
So, Mr. Chair, I guess I will make the motion that we recess.
Okay.
I will second that motion.
Okay, then we are recessed. Please stay on if you'd like to participate in questions and answers by the listeners. And we're going to open it up. The first hand up is Randy Paul. Randy, would you like to unmute and speak to us?
Sure, thank you. I entered the meeting late. I didn't get the notice until late this afternoon. So I only caught just a little bit of the poll discussions that you were having.
Okay, it is recorded, so you'll be able to.
Okay, great. Just the concerns that I heard in the brief discussion was what you're concerned about is Genesis Church. The Help America Vote Act talks about accessible ramps, not accessible ramps with help. And I would just remind you, a lot of people with disabilities value their independence. If they don't know they're going to need help getting up a ramp, they could very well show up and not be able to do it.
Yep.
And actually, according to the ADA, they shouldn't have to. They shouldn't have to bring somebody with them. They should be able to do that on their own. Second thing was, again, I just saw a school listed, and I don't know if you handled the problem of twice a day you're going to have school buses that are going to prevent parking. And then the last one, and I don't know this for sure, but in my 25 years in a wheelchair, I've never seen a portable toilet that would accommodate somebody in a wheelchair. Now, I may be wrong on that. You may be able to find those, but I certainly have never seen them. That's all I had for today.
Okay. Anyone on the phone like to respond to any of those questions?
Well, we had a handicap porta-john at Election Central. So they do exist. And Randy, there's no school on election day at the
Good.
polling places that we have. The only one that was
Right.
an
Ellettsville is,
appointment was the Edgewood High School,
Yeah.
and everybody I think is going to go to another location
Okay,
for
good.
that one.
Yep.
But
And
I do
then,
think that there is a portable handicap, porta potty, but I'm assuming it's probably difficult to use, to be quite honest. That's what I've heard.
Well, you just have to have them at all the sites where you need them. So I don't know if you can get that many. But again, I don't know that for sure. I just have never run into it.
Sure. I do know that we did have one at Election Central. And I don't know if it was used or not. But
And a
we
wheelchair-
will have it. At Unionville, we'll have to have one. That is a big pole, and we know where we can place it in its own level ground right near the cutout for the handicap.
So it's large enough for a wheelchair to go alongside the toilet and transfer
It is.
over. Okay.
It is. At Unionville, that's the one I'm speaking on.
Okay.
yeah, and we're considering that for one or two other sites as well.
That is correct.
We should know by next Tuesday's work meeting what those sites will be. Stay
Then
tuned. And by the way, Randy, the link you used today will be the same link you need to use next week and every Tuesday for our working meetings at 2:30.
And then on Genesis Church, the only other point was that, Sri, I know I think you found them. We did buy ramps. What was it, 2012? So I don't know.
I
if
do
any of-
have a ramp that we could use there. My huge ramp doesn't have handrails, and Sherry made the comment you would have to have a handrail. So that's the reason why I want someone else to go out there and tell me what I can do. I hate to walk away from Genesis. They've been so wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you
I have
can,
to, I have to.
but if you can, try to avoid it being dependent on somebody showing up with the voter to help them.
I agree.
Yeah, Randy, I think as a team, we want to thank you for sensitizing us to a lot of the accessibility issues that drove this effort this summer.
I agree.
And it was a lot more difficult than I thought.
Yeah, it gets tricky.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, do we have any other questions from B Square or Katz or Ernest Rawlings, Ralph Shaw, Stephen Hale? If not, then we will end the meeting and say see you all next Tuesday for our next work meeting. Thank you.